Uroczystość rozpocznie się za około 5 minut. Przypominam, że
SGH, SGH, Szkoła Główna Handlowa. 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 SGH, SGH, Szkoła Główna Kiedy my żyjemy, co nam obca przemoc wzięła, szablą odbierzemy. Marsz, marsz Dąbrowski, z ziemi włoskiej do Polski, za swoim przewodem złączyć się z narodem. Marsz, marsz Dąbrowski, z ziemi włoskiej do Polski, za swoim przewodem złączyć się z narodem.
Otwieram uroczyste posiedzenie.
I open the ceremonial session
of the Senate of the Warsaw School of Economics on the occasion of awarding the honoris causa doctoral degree to Professor Michela Librowicza. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome all the distinguished guests to this splendid ceremony, all the distinguished guests who have accepted our invitation to participate in the ceremony. First of all, I'd like to welcome the reviewers, Professor Bogdan Nogalski and Professor Maria Gorynia. And I would like to appreciate the reviews. I would also like to welcome the former presidents of Warsaw School of Economics in Warsaw, Professor Adam Budnikowski and Professor Marek Rocki. Also, one of the applicants, Professor Marek Gruszyński. Also, the former CEMBA directors and staff, the past and present CEMBA program lecturers, representatives of the CEMBA Advisory Board, representatives of the Polish-Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and the CEMBA program students and alumni, as well as their families and university employees. Welcome to all of you wholeheartedly. As well as all those of you who are watching today's broadcast, in particular the professor's friends in Canada. It's our great honor to have you with us. I'm also very happy at the presence of the representatives of the SGH Economic Council, the University's Economic Council. But first of all, I would like to welcome the most important participant of today's ceremony, Professor Michela Librowicza. A heartfelt welcome to you, Professor. I would like to ask Professor Joanny Wielgórskiej-Leszczyńskiej, Dean of the Management and Finance College, to kindly take the floor. Your Magnificence, dear Senate, dear invited guests, today's celebration is connected with the presentation of the honoris causa doctorate. But just to make it clear, in June 2019, 3 recommendations were submitted to His Magnificence, the President of Warsaw School of Economics, to confer the title of the honoris causa to Mr. Michela Librowicza. The recommendations were presented by Madam Professor Anna Paluchna from the Theory of Management Chair of the college, Mr. Gruszyński from the College of Econometrics, and Mr. Jacek Mironski, then from the International Management and Finance College, right now functioning under a different name. By the resolution of October 22nd, 2020, the Senate's committee decided to apply to the Senate to confer the title of honoris causa doctor to Professor Librowicza. And in 2021, after the voting by secret ballot, by virtue of the resolution 99/2021, the process of conferring the title was commenced, including the appointment of Professor Wachowiaka as the sponsor, and appointing 3 reviewers, Professor Gorynia from the University of Poznań, Professor Nogalski, the honorary head of the title, and Professor Posianski, the Emeritus Professor of the Warsaw School of Economics. On June 23rd, 2020, after voting by secret ballot by virtue of Resolution 733, the Senate conferred the title of honoris causa doctor to Professor Mieczysław Michela Librowicz. And today, on June 23rd, 2022, we celebrate the special session of the Senate to convey the diploma confirming the fact of conferring the title to Professor Librowicz. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Dean. Now, ladies and gentlemen, item 5, the laudation of the supervisor. As mentioned, I am the supervisor. That's what happens when I was appointed supervisor. I wasn't the president of the Warsaw School of Economics back then. Distinguished Senate, distinguished professor, distinguished reviewers of the nominees' accomplishments, dear ladies and gentlemen, the laudation which I have the honor of pronouncing in conjunction with conferring the title of Doctor Honoris Causa to the professor is quite a challenge. Per paragraph 8 of the Warsaw School of Economics statutes, the honoris causa doctorate is awarded to people who are people of particular merits for the development of the economy and international cooperation. It goes without saying that the professor meets the criteria, both didactic and scientific accomplishments of the professor, as well as his great contribution to the development of business education in Poland and in particular in the Warsaw School of Economics, deserve the greatest appreciation. At the same time, the indication of the most important work and discussion of his impressive accomplishments would not be sufficient but for his other merits. The view of a scholar, teacher, lecturer of several generations of students, PhD students, would not be complete if it did not contain components relating to his pioneering accomplishments. When it comes to the development and organization of MBA programs in Poland, you cannot also skip the professor's role as one of the initiators of the internal reform of Warsaw School of Economics, owing to which, at the turn of the economic transformation in Poland, it stepped up to the forefront of business and economic education, both in Poland and CEE. You can undoubtedly say that Professor Michela Librowicz is the face of success of the MBA programs at Warsaw School of Economics. His contacts with our university reach back to 1973, when, along with a group of 35 Canadian students, he arrived in Warsaw for secondment. By taking advantage of his prior teaching and organizational experience, in 1990, the Canadian scholar initiated the Canadian Management Training and Development Program for Poland, initiated by the Canadian government, transformed in 1995 into the Canadian Executive MBA Center, which soon became the flagship program for business education in Poland, subsidized initially by the government in Ottawa. The program in 2001 broke even and as an independent program is still being continued. Owing to the professor's involvement, as well as several dozen scholars from Poland, mostly Warsaw School of Economics, could participate in secondments in Canada. The professor turned out at the same time a great supporter of launching his own MBA program at our university. He always emphasized that a university of the rank as Warsaw School of Economics should have its own signature separate MBA program in place. Professor Librowicz is an outstanding economist and a recognized expert in international business, a specialist for Canadian and Polish economic relations. He's also an author of numerous books and textbooks, as well as key papers in international business. He was the author of Ideas, as well as he headed many projects, scientific projects, many of them in cooperation with Warsaw School of Economics. He has also been the head of the Polish-Canadian Economic Chamber. The professor's co-workers know his famous quote that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a riddle, and the present is the present is a gift. Remembering that gift in English means a present as well as a talent that a given person has been given. During today's ceremony, we would like to honor the professor's so far accomplishments by expressing our gratitude for the opportunity of taking advantage of his numerous talents, both in terms of organization and science, which we indeed consider a great gift for the Warsaw School of Economics. And when it comes to the mystery unveiled future, we can only hope for the professor to accompany us for many years in our journey towards the future and the ever-rising bar. Let's come back to the past for a moment, which under the professor's pragmatic approach is not as important as the present, but without looking back, it would be difficult to understand the special nature of Professor Michela Librowicz's journey. A graduate of the Paris School of Economics, which was ranked first among business schools in Europe, and Columbia Business School in New York City, and then the PhD studies at the Sorbonne, where in 1981 he defended his PhD devoted to the global market of oilseeds. He was born in Katowice, the capital of Upper Silesia, in 1946. After moving to Warsaw, where he graduated from the elementary school, in 1961 he left Poland for France. There he studied at the university and continued them in the US. In 1975, he started work as a lecturer at the University of Quebec in Montreal. Even though the key element of Michela Librowicz's education, which actually Mieczysław Librowicz called Michel by his colleagues, students, and co-workers, owing to the difficulty of the Polish pronunciation, even though his education took place in the West, his bonds with Poland and Warsaw turned out to be resilient to the flow of time. Quite on the contrary, Professor Librowicz, who apart from the Canadian, also holds the Polish citizenship, all the projects connected with Poland, including the MBAs. Warsaw School of Economics takes a special place in it, and the strong bond between the professor and Warsaw School of Economics is legendary. The professor is so much connected with our university that he hardly ever leaves it, and you can meet him in every season here, which was confirmed by our new spokesperson, who said that he came to the university at 9 p.m. and he met, who should he meet but Professor Librowicz. Both on weekdays and weekends, there are few things that are certain in today's world. One of them are taxes, and the other thing is that if it's a Sunday, Professor Librowicz can be met at the Warsaw School of Economics. Professor Librowicz's accomplishments is a prime example of professional career, especially in such realms as higher education and broadly understood economic sciences, and even more so in terms of learning about management. That's what Professor Poszański mentioned in his review, emphasizing that management is part of practical approaches, which makes it different both in terms of cognitive as well as methodology and the ethical aspects from other scientists. And the generation of new science is always accompanied with feedback with its recipients. Professor Poszański considered Professor Librowicz as a scholar who's close to the paragon or role model of a practical scholar. In his view, the academic activities of Professor Librowicz is not only limited to the generation of knowledge, but also encompasses parts of its transfer and dissemination, as well as building normative models, as well as expert activity. Professor Poszański emphasized at the same time that this required perfect, multifaceted preparation and multiple qualifications that the professor has.
As marked by another reviewer, Professor Bogdan Nogalski, who is an honorary chair of the Management Sciences in PAN, with a great attention writing about contribution of the professor to works about deep program and structural reforms, and also organization and development of Polish managers, the system of managerial education at the highest possible level in the form of MBA studies in Poland. The professional path of the professor is immensely interesting and exceptional. Since 1975, he has been a professor of commerce, international commerce, in the largest economic university in Canada, namely at the University of Quebec in Montreal. In his review, it is mentioned by Professor Nogalski. Between 1978 and 1982, he was there a director of management faculty. In 1985, he was creator of International Trade Department, and which he headed for 22 years until 27. Between 1995 and 2011, he headed the Cathedral of Agrobusiness at the University of Quebec, covering 60 public universities in that province. During his multi-year and rich career in academia, Professor Librowicz lectured at various universities outside Canada and Poland, in Burundi, in China, in Dominicana, in Ecuador, in Mexico, in Peru, and also in the US. The list of those universities is by all means impressive, which was mentioned in the review by Professor Marian Goryniak from the Institute of International Economy of the Economic University in Poznań, the ex-president of that university. The professor stressed the versatility of publications published by Professor Librowicz. You have both books, chapters in books, and also numerous publications from articles to others. The main problematic axes are issues connected with broadly understood international trade, and in particular with export. It is mentioned in the review and marked that among texts in French, English, you can find publications which are theoretical and practical. Apart from international trade, Professor Librowicz put a lot of attention to small and medium-sized enterprises in the context of international business and globalization. And also there are publications relating to the industry called as agrobusiness, which was noted by Professor Goryń. All the reviewers, and together with them the applicants to give Professor Librowicz the honoris causa doctorate, with the highest degree of appreciation, they stress his contribution to the reform of the Warsaw School of Economics, actions taken by Professor Michela Librowicza within the Canadian program of helping the Warsaw School of Economics became one of the factors enabling conduct of a breadth reform of studies at the university, and they are a role model for many other higher schools of education. To a large extent, the implementation of Professor Librowicz's initiative, it helped revive the role of Warsaw School as a promoter of changes in the sector of higher education institutes, both with regard to scope of educational offer and its quality. And this is enjoyed by this school for many years, which was marked by Professor Bogdan Nogalski. From his side, as a president of the Warsaw School of Economics, I would like to stress that building organizationally and meritorically the center, which is among the best rated educational managerial programs in the world, this was made possible thanks to constant and close collaboration of the professor with subsequent presidents of our university, with Professor Aleksander Willer, with Professor Janina Jóźwiak, with Professor Marek Grodzki, with Professor Adam Butynkowski, and with Professor Tomasz Shapiro. The collaboration is continued with the same intensity and involvement also with regard to the previous current group of presidents, which I have the pleasure to chair. Like my predecessors, I owe a great gratitude to Professor Michela Librowicz for advice and inspiration that he shared with us, will share with us, and is sharing with us. Thanks to Professor, who was the first person encouraging our school to apply for foreign accreditations. Our university has Mba accreditations for all MBA programs and also other accreditations awarded in 2021. This all would not have been possible if not for the first steps taken by the CEMBA program. The process of accreditation in MBA was orchestrated by the professor, giving indications to those who were preparing for accreditation visits and paid attention to all kinds of inconsistencies. His achievements really made the accreditation process easier, which is thing I would like to thank you once again, because together with the professor I had very many talks about it, and for sure those accreditations were easier. The CEMBA program educated almost 800 graduates. Each of those business leaders had a personal contact with the professor, with Professor Librowicz, be it during recruitment, where he always was involved, or also classes and events at the university. The professor was always eager to meet students and graduates. He treated those talks as a good source of further improvements of the program. This human dimension of academic activity of the professor seems to be especially worth stressing. Professor Michela Librowicza, he earned the opinion of a person who is very friendly, and in case of any disagreements or conflict of interest, he always went beyond the scheme or a procedure regulating the activity of a program. Professor always worked with his collaborators in a good fashion. When there were conflict situations, the professor always in the first place asked what can be done to reconcile our problems. This attitude proves very good qualifications of the nominated person, which Professor Konszański sees the realization of the academic model of an evangelist. Yes, academic evangelist, enabling transfer of knowledge, theoretical, into the sphere of organizational practice. The list of achievements of Professor Librowicz to the Warsaw School of Economics is so long that if you were to list all of them, we would have to stay here until the morning. Unless you want to spend this time until the morning with us, then I can read the whole list. I'm prepared for that. But I will, however, concentrate on the most important ones. Thanks to Professor, at the beginning of the 90s, the library of our university was equipped with something that seems in our time strange. What it is, but at that time computers was a very huge success. Next, we received foreign publications and access to databases for our students. Employees fashioned computers to explore data files and working on the right systems. Professor Michela Librowicz was also an initiator of translation and adaptation to Polish conditions of teaching materials, cases, and simulation games. The professional professor's achievement was that he encouraged Canadian professors to write didactic material based on experience of Polish enterprises. Thereby, he was promoting Polish economic successes and at the same time took care for close connection in practical and theoretical business links. The professor who was involved in the collaboration agreement signed between the governments of Canada and Poland at the beginning of the 90s, pursuant to which we had young people, young scientists traveling to Canada, not only from our university, but also from economic universities in Wrocław, or from the economic university in Poznań, or from the economic universities in Szczecin. He is a master of conversation. One of the elements of selection were qualification talks that the professor conducted as a rule personally. This was not a classical recruitment. The things that were mentioned in those conversations went much beyond specialized knowledge. As a rule, these were talks enable one to evaluate general knowledge, approach to life, familiarity with philosophy, sociology, and politics. Those talks lasted and lasted and lasted. But following the exit, when the exchange of thoughts with Professor Librowicz ended, the interlocutor, until the end of his life, maintained this a special experience in his memory. This is confirmed by memories from various graduates of MBA studies in our school. The formation of CEMBA in 1995, it did not stop the exchange of human resources that was typical of the program in Poland. Pursuant to the Canadian and Polish agreement, in the first years, Polish scholars used the experience of Canadian counterparts. For every subject, we had a subordinated Polish-Canadian pair of executors. Young Polish scholars went to Canadian universities to train there, to watch things, to absorb good practices and jointly prepare classes. The exchange of experience is a constant element of activity of CEMBA. In summary, the resolution of our Senate dated 24th June 2020 on awarding the honoris causa doctorate to Professor Michela Librowicza obliges us to honor the great economist, promoter of collaboration between Canada and Poland, a spiritual father of business MBA education in Poland, and an experienced academic teacher and a great colleague who at the same time is a partner setting the biggest demands on himself and on collaborators. Everybody who had the privilege of working with Professor know that it is not an easy task, because it means working on the details. And you can work on it ad infinitum. It implicates changes and working on the next versions of documents, reports, agreements, or even emails. The perfectionist approach has its price, and we are used already that as long as something is not sent and written and accepted by the authorities of the university, the matter is still not closed and anything can still change. For our Doctor Honoris Causa, you don't have anything else, but always it can be better. At the same time, we realize that if not this strive for perfection and continuous increase in the bar, our university wouldn't have achieved all those successes that became the reason for today's celebration. Wishing the professor continued great achievements in all fields that I mentioned in the oration addressed to the university community, I would like to extend the wish that the attitude presented by Professor Librowicz when creating the CEMBA program and developing it for over the years and making it a great success, that such an attitude is shared by our university at large. We achieved a success. Professor Librowicz used to say when he learned about yet another success of the program he launched. Yes, fine, but let's get down to work, to go further, to go forward ahead of the competition. Even if things are not fine, his collaborators said, the professor said with a wink of an eye and said, we will make it. The impossible does not exist for the professor, and it's the most important reaction that the Warsaw School of Economics, proud of the CEMBA program, should take from its 33 year stretch of collaboration with a professor. And thanks for which you deserve a honoris causa doctorate. I wish the Professor Rybowicz, a lot of health and once again, many successes. Once again, I would like to thank on behalf of the entire Warsaw School of Economics community for many years of intensive collaboration with our alma mater, asking you for further involvement in our university. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you once again. Now Professor Anna Wielgórska-Leszczyńska to read the Latin text. Everything will be fine, for sure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Officinarum, regendarum, pecunique administrande professor extraordinarus. Hoc tempore rector magnificus. Joanna Wielgórska-Leszczyńska, scientarum economicarum doctris habilitata, Collegii officinarum regendarum pecunique administrade profestrix extraordinara hoc tempore decanus sectabilis. Piotra Wachowiaka, scientiarum economicarum doctor habilitatus, Collegii officinarum regendarum pecunique administrande, professor extraordinarus hoc tempore promotor rite constitutus. Ex autoritate senats scholae principis scientiarum economicarum et commerci. Die 24 mensis Juni anno bis millesimo vicesimo. In professorem Michelem Librowicz pro multis et plecaris in Poloniam et Canadam socias et administratis. In operbius scientiarum rerumque academicarum. Ac precipue in iis que ad officinas regendas petrinat redendas. Doctoris honoris causa nomen et hores jura privilegia continuimus. In cuius rei pepertamaque hot documentum siglio scholae principis scenarium economicarum et commerci imperoso. Sancendium cuvacimus. Datum Varsovie die vicemso tertio mensis Juno anno bis millesimo vicesimo secundo. Hoc tempore doctor magnificus, hoc tempore decanus spectabilis, hoc tempore promotor rite constitutus.
Ladies and gentlemen, now the most important part of the celebration will take place, namely the presentation of the diploma to the honoris causa doctor. Now I will have to read the Latin sentence, which in Polish reads, now, therefore, nothing stands in the way of us conferring this dignity of the Warsaw School of Economics upon thee. Therefore, I hereby nominate thee for the honoris causa doctorate and announce that thou hast been appointed. All rights and responsibilities I bestow unto thee. To confirm this, the diploma bears the seal of the Warsaw School of Economics. To thee I commit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please all rise and we'll pass on to the celebration consisting in the presentation.
Stoimy, proszę Państwa.
We'll keep standing, ladies and gentlemen, because we're pass on to the presentation of the diploma. May I ask Ma'am Dean and the doctor.
Honoris culia principia centarium economirum et commerci tibi imperatimus. Ergo ego to doctorem honoris causa creatam renunto ominque doctoris honoris causa iure ac privilga in de confero in iusque fidem hoc diploma scholae principis censarium economicarium et commerci siglo insitium tibi in manus trado. Bardzo proszę o zajęcie miejsc.
Please be seated. Now we're passing on, ladies and gentlemen, to the next item of the agenda, the honoris causa doctor's lecture. Over to you, Professor. Your magnificent, eminent Senate, dear professors, dear guests and CMBA graduates, when I found out that to my theoretically oriented French education, the practically oriented US education, and the Canadian professorship, where I try to combine both approaches, now a honoris causa doctorate of the Warsaw School of Economics is being joined, I couldn't have imagined a better combination. In the biblical tradition, gratitude constitutes a very important value. I start every day with the Mode Ani prayer, where I express my gratitude for being alive. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to His Magnificence, the President Marek Rocki, Professor Marek Rocki, during whose term of office was commenced and now completed by Professor Piotra Wachowiaka, as well as I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Senate, Madam Dean Joanny Wielgórskiej-Leszczyńskiej, and the community of Warsaw School of Economics for this special honor. It's been 60 years when I left Poland on my own after graduating from the Staszic High School, then Gottwald High School number 14, which was a perfect school with a spirit of companionship that I never encountered in any other place. Some of my colleagues are still today. We also had great teachers. Our favorite was Professor Zygmunt Saloni, whose presence here with us here is what I'd like to emphasize. Professor. As mentioned by the president of the university, I returned to Warsaw exactly 33 years ago in June 1989 with a group of Canadian students from Montreal. They were witnesses of the historic changes that took place in Poland back then. That trip was organized by Professor Radomski from SGPIS, and that's how the cooperation of ECG, Université de Quebec et Montreal, and Warsaw School of Economics commenced. This program was always supported by the presidents of Warsaw School of Economics, Rocki, Shapiro, Budnikowski, deputy presidents Prokop and Gruszczyński, as well as Józef Miller and Professor Nowakowski. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the prior program directors, Professor Gruszczyński and Professor Kotowska. The topic of my intervention today is the state of globalization in 2022, its impact of business education.
Professor Aniszewska-Banaś, the current CEMBA director, and Magister Piotr Górski, który brilliantly presented the preliminary results of our joint research that we've done at LUQAM and in Warsaw on the impact of pandemic on the executive education. We will publish our results as soon as the study is completed, which it is not yet, but it will be, I would imagine, within next 12 to 14, 15 months. As was mentioned, I will be talking about the impact of globalization and deglobalization on the executive education. Because of the time constraint, I cut short the second part of what I wanted to say, specifically about the education, but I like to, this will be published, by the way, the part that I just cut, that I had because of the time constraint to cut out, but I would like to discuss the concept of globalization and deglobalization. And I shall start, therefore, with the quote from Professor Theodore Leavitt, who coined this concept of globalization in a seminal article published in the Harvard Business Review in June 1983. As you can see, Professor Leavitt identified two vectors which drive the world, the vector of technology and the vector of globalization. It's very easy to understand the vector of technology, and however, as far as the vector of globalization is concerned, the question is, well, what drives globalization? And I would like to discuss several drivers of globalization. I like to review, first of all, the reduction of tariffs and non-tariff barriers to the international trade. The market, as we know, is very much influenced and impacted by the institutions, national institutions or international institutions. The positive impact of GATT and WTO agreements is reflected by very strong reduction of tariff barriers when the GATT was signed in 1948. The average rate of custom tariffs on manufactured goods in 23 countries, which were signatory to the GATT agreement, were 40%. After several cycles of international negotiation, at the end of Uruguay round, at the end of the 20th century, this rate went down to 2.2%. Another element in globalization phenomenon was obviously the economic integration. Agreements like the creation of the EEC, European Economic Union, by the Treaty of Rome, which was signed on 25th of March, 1957, then superseded by the Treaty of Maastricht. On the side of North America, and a little bit based on the success of the American President Ronald Reagan said, okay, if the Europeans can do this type of agreement, why should North America not copy at least part of them? And that's how there was a free trade agreement between the United States and Canada, which also opened this international trade flow, which is, in terms of volume, the largest trade agreement and relationship between two sovereign countries. We have about $1.5 million crossing Canadian and American border every single day. Another element in the globalization dynamics was obviously the disintegration of the Soviet Union and the major reforms in the People's Republic of China. The integration of the disintegrated Soviet Union empire introduced and integrated the post-Comecon countries into the EU. At the same time, and even a little bit before, we had a dereglementation element which was very, very important to the opening of the market. Here I like to quote the President of the United States while he was running to win his election, which he did win hands down, and became a very, very popular president in the US. Here is a quote. I am from The most terrific words in the English language are, I am from the government and I'm here to help. When he did become the President of the United States, President Reagan started a strong deregulation process in some American sectors like communication or airline industry. All of a sudden, we have a tremendous increase of competition in these sectors, and as a result of the deregulation, the competition became relatively ferocious, but who won? The consumer did. The prices on airline tickets between Europe and North America, between North America and Asia, went down considerably. Very similar phenomenon happened in the communication and in the transportation sectors. Okay, I am now going to talk about the phenomenon of deglobalization. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, you probably read the book by the social scientist Francis Fukuyama, who said, okay, capitalism won, the Soviet system lost, that is the end of history. End of the last man, he said. Well, maybe it was the end of Francis Fukuyama's story, but our story, thanks God, continue, and it went into somewhat different direction than this over-optimistic look for what's going on. I mean, at the end of the 20th century, and looking at the positive worldwide political situation, capitalism and free enterprise system won, Soviet system lost, and therefore we could quote Voltaire, tout va pour le mieux dans le meilleur du monde, dans les Candides. Translation, żyjemy w najlepszych z możliwych.
We're living in the best of worlds. Everything is the best.
History doesn't operate on the linear basis. And deglobalization phenomenon started really, according to Alain Touraine, a famous French social scientist, with a terrorist attack on New York City on September 11th, 2001, when all of a sudden the borders were closed, the security issues became of prime importance, the borders control, let's say, between US and Canada, today the control, even on the merchandise, is very, very different from what it was prior to 2001. And the security procedures at the airports have been really changed on a permanent basis. However, other observers consider that deglobalization really started with the global financial crisis of 2007 and 2009. If you recall, this particular worldwide crisis was engineered not by the Main Street, but mainly by the Wall Street. It happened because of unregulated and also combined with the greed of the financial sectors of the people working on the Wall Street. Excuse me. The financial engineers, mostly from New York, but not only from New York, invented a series of financial instruments who were extremely speculative, and very few people who used them really understood them. And it is valid for the individuals, for the companies, and also for the whole countries. like Greece or Spain, who borrowed money without really understanding what the instruments that they're using, especially the derivative instruments, whose value were 10 times the world GDP. At that time, the world GDP was about $65 trillion, whereas the value of derivatives was 10 times that. So it was basically a casino type of situation. And what was the result? The crisis. What was the result? The increase of inequalities in Western countries, especially in the United States. Professor Stiglitz from Columbia University, Nobel Prize winner, calculated that one family, Walton family, the owner Sam Walton was the main shareholder, but also the founder of Walmart. 6 people from his family, plus 2 people from Koch family. Koch family are in petroleum and heavy equipment from Texas, 8 Americans. The value of the assets controlled by 8 citizens of the United States, according to Professor Stiglitz, was equivalent to the assets of 115 million Americans on the other side of the revenue spectrum. 8 against 115 million. The equality issue was even reinforced by another element of the globalization, meaning pandemics. Pandemics benefited, obviously, to some sectors. Most of the sectors lost, but some sectors, especially retail online, and you know that I will talk about someone who is extremely, who had tremendous contribution to the world economy, the owner of and the founder of Amazon. And except that, in terms of inequality of revenues, just during the pandemic, the assets of Jeff Bezos were increased by the equivalent of GDP of a country like Costa Rica or Lithuania. Or the founder of Tesla, we have a situation whereas Mr. Musk has an equity which is equivalent to the GDP of the richest African country, which happens to be his native country, South Africa. So this inequality issue obviously became a political issue and unfortunately allowed some anti-globalization forces to use the inequality for political gain. There is an excellent book by Jan Miller who wrote What is Populism? When he explains how using this inequality issue became an instrument in the elections in democratic societies. Now, it is obvious the inequality issue has to be dealt, but it has to be dealt in the spirit of, once again, of the, and I take the biblical approach, if we want to perfect the world, it is fair to, even obligatory, to discuss how can we solve social problems. However, this is different from using specific difficulty for the political gain. So, are you concerned about the welfare of the citizens, or you are using the arguments because this is a way to get to the prime minister office or president's office? Okay. Now, lately, as dramatic events of February 24th, 2022 adds to the deglobalization dynamics. That is, we have a member country of Security Council of Organization of so-called United Nations, who basically attack another independent country. Consequence, we have the human consequences, as we know, are awful and terrible. On the economic side, we have an increase in energy crisis, in energy costs. We have an increase in agricultural commodities. We have a major supply disruption, and we have sharp increase in the communication, the merchandise communication costs. And all this obviously goes into a different direction than the previous dynamics, which was the dynamics of opening, dynamics who led to this optimistic outlook. Unfortunately, it seems like in the short run, we will be living through challenging times. And to summarize, it seems that the new normal of the business environment includes these two contrasting scenarios. On the one hand, the unrestrained global markets, and the global markets, on the other hand, replete with impediments, political, geopolitical, social, and otherwise. I like to quote already in the 12th century, the philosopher Maimonides insisted on the importance of avoiding extreme positions and instead to favor moderate centrist position in all human activities, including religion, politics, and business. Thus, it seems to me, in relation to the issue of globalization and deglobalization, it is worthwhile to consider the third option, called semi-globalization, as proposed by Professor Gemawat from Harvard Business School before, and now he's a professor at the New York Business School. Once again, we had in our plan, we wanted to discuss a little bit our study on the impact of this globalization, deglobalization dynamics. I'm going to, as I mentioned before, to shorten what I wanted to say. In terms of executive education, on the one side, the participants, they are looking for skill developments on the left side of the equation. On the right side of my equation, we have two elements, the skill acquisition and the skill transfer. Now, it appears from our studies that in terms of skill acquisition, the new situation, which is the trend towards the blending mode of delivery online and in class, will become a permanent feature of the business education. Of each and every report that we have seen while preparing our studies confirms that the blended model is the one that will be adopted. Now the question is there any difference in terms of courses in which there is a preference for the online mode of delivery and on the other side on the delivery in classroom? It appears from the preliminary results that the courses which lend themselves to, I would say, algorithmic type of solutions, when you have to deal with courses and problems which need to use this step-by-step process, like calculating ROE or ROA, or marketing research, or accounting problems, it seems that in those courses, there is a preference to adopt the online mode of delivery. On the other hand, the skills which sometimes are called meta skills, like negotiation skills, or communication, or empowerment. This type of courses lends themselves to more to the inline, to the in-class delivery. Now, we do know that this globalization and deglobalization has an immediate impact on the way we operate. In the previous period, which was when the globalization was going the way of development, in the case of our school, we became very quickly the largest business school in Canada and had 18 MBA programs in 22 cities. In some countries, we were giving MBA in more than one city. Now, with deglobalization, we had to basically reduce our activities, and almost in each and every jurisdiction, and I think it happens as well as elsewhere, or I know it happens elsewhere, there is a reduction in terms of recruitment, and therefore it is the programs will face the challenging period. Now, just to finish, in spite of all difficulties, in terms of most popular courses, which I mentioned, which have to be given in class, are the what we call foreign mission. In our program, we had summer school in Montreal, mission to China, and mission to Silicon Valley. These were very, very successful courses, which basically with pandemic, and now because of the consequences of the war, the borders were closed, therefore the foreign missions were prohibited or impossible to realize. And now, with the increase of prices that I just mentioned in terms of transportation costs and hotel costs, it appears that missions abroad, which has been so much appreciated by our students, will have a difficulty recruiting because of the price. Okay, but we hope that the situation will get back to the previous peace, but at one point the conflict will end, and at one point the consequences of it, specifically the dollar will go down, the zloty and other currency will go up, and therefore it will become feasible to do what we were unable to do during the last 2 years. Finally, I like to finish by quoting the president, the CEO of Rogers Communication, which is one of the largest Canadian communication firms. And here what the CEO and major shareholder of this company says: if you aim at being number one, you may end up number two. But if you aim at being number two, you will end up number 10. CEMBA is and must continue to aim at being number one. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo.
Bardzo dziękuję panu
Thank you very much, Professor, for a very interesting lecture. And once again, I would like to ask you to accept, on behalf of our entire community, accept the congratulations. I would like to once again thank the professor, especially for the compliments. I wish that my late mother couldn't hear it, but she can hear it up there in heaven. Ladies and gentlemen, in our celebration, we have been joined by one applicant, Professor Jacek Juroński, who is sitting up there, and he has been with us all the time. We said a lot about the CEMBA program, about how this program is close to the professor. That is why right now I will ask Professor Janiszewska-Banaś, the director of CEMBA, to chair the next part of our celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, the second part of the celebration will be conducted in English.
Part of today's ceremony conferring the Mba Diplomas. This is the first graduation since the beginning of the pandemic. We meet for the first time in the new normal. This is why we have some information to share with you. First is the retirement of 2 our employees, Mrs. Vera Koseska, the CEMBA accountant, and Wiesław Banasiewicz, program manager. We would like to thank them for the cooperation. Wiesiek, you are the part of the history of the program. You are the part of of my professional life. So thank you for these years. Since the last graduation, we unfortunately had to say goodbye to several people who left us forever. Let me mention Professor Julian Cataneo, Professor of Human Resources Management, who passed away last year. Mrs. Maria Banasiewicz, the employee of CEMBA MBA SGH programs for many years, who passed away in 2019. And Diana Kazakiewicz, the student of 25th cohort, president of Ignitis, who passed this year. They all were passionate, energetic, and very friendly people. So I would like you to, I want to ask you to stand and have a moment of silence in their memory. Thank you. And now, Professor Kamal Buzinab, the Director of Local and International Executive MBA programs at the Uniwersytetu Quebec à Montreal, will give the message. Professor, the floor is yours.
Well, dear academic authorities, member of the Senate, dear rector, all the member of the faculty members and the academic and administrative staff, distinguished guests, dear graduates, and family and friends, good evening. Thank you very much for having me. I received the call some days ago, and I was with my wife, and I was told to talk about 3 to 5 minutes, and my daughter was there, and I was like, what I'm going to say, and she told me, just deliver a quick message, don't give a lecture. I took the challenge, and I hope that I will succeed. So first of all, I would like to warmly congratulate all our graduates who are receiving their degrees on this special day. I'm delighted and greatly honored to be able to address these words to you on behalf of the University of Quebec in Montreal in my capacity of the director of the UQAM's Executive MBA program. A program that was created 40 years ago with more than 800 active students around the world and more than 12,000 graduates in more than 13 countries around the world. Our partnership with the Warsaw School of Economics exists for nearly 30 years. The CEMBA program was created by Dr. Librowicz. Thank you, and congratulations. And is considered as one of our most valuable and internationally successful and recognized programs. I would like to warmly thank Dr. Librowicz for these great initiatives and for all his sustained and enduring work since then. I would also congratulate all the team and address a special thanks to the CEMBA staff and team members, especially Dr. Grażyna, for its active work and dynamism, and also for Piotra Wachowiaka. I don't know if he's here. So thank you very much for your excellent work and contribution with our staff and with our university. In North America, the graduation ceremony is called commencement, which means the beginning of something. Indeed, the master's degree you are about to receive today does not only attest to the fulfillment of the academic requirements of your program, but above all, it announces the beginning of a new step, right in your personal and professional journey. During your studies in the program, you have acquired new knowledge, learned new concepts, discovered new theoretical frameworks, experimented new tools, and developed new skills. While knowledge, concepts, tools will be important in your future journey and undertakings, the most important asset to take away with you will be your attitude. In facing adversity, your endurance, your personal values, and your positive and open mindset forged during your MBA journey, and especially those who get through the pandemic and the crisis that we are living today. As theoretical frameworks and models, tools, and techniques change over time, fundamental attitudes and values must be maintained despite contextual changes. If there is one thing you should take with you on your future journey, it will be those. In an ever-changing, uncertain, and complex world, as Professor and Dr. Librowicz said, and showed us, embrace uncertainty and manage ambiguity through foresight and agile execution are the skills that you will need for your future journey. As you certainly noticed during your studies, developing leadership, strategic and critical thinking, foresight, and entrepreneurship open up new paths and allow to set creative, sustainable, and audacious goals for the future. Leadership based on aspirational alignment, discipline, and agile execution will make it possible to achieve those goals and to create a sustainable added value. Pragmatism, practical solutions, international perspectives, methodological rigor, and applied knowledge form the foundations that supports our program's attributes. Social responsibility, integrity, ethics, and social involvement and impact concerns are the fundamental values that form the core of our graduates' attitude. So these are the things that you should carry on from now to the future. Antonio Machado has left us some wise and profound words that apply very well to the journey you're about to begin after your graduation. He said, "Walkers, your footsteps are the path and nothing more. Walkers, there is no path. But the path is made by walking. As you walk, the path is made. And as you look back, you see the path that you will never tread again. Walkers, there is no path but trails in the sea." Guided by your attitude and values gained through our programs, I wish you all a path of success, of achievements that will make the difference, will add value and positively contribute, and and positively contribute in improving your companies, organizations, communities, and society in general. I hope that these will be the trails you will see when you will look back later to your personal and professional achievements in the future. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you very much.
And now the second most important moment of today's ceremony, conferring of the MBA degrees. Top students graduating today will receive diplomas with distinction. The diplomas will be conferred by Rector Piotra Wachowiaka, Professor Kamal Buzinab, and Bernard Otterstein, President of the Polish-Canadian Chamber of Commerce, our strategic partner. Radosław Borowski. Julia Grunwald. Wojciech Jakubowski. Justyna Lorenz-Wieczorkiewicz. Michał Mazurek. Aleksandra Osikowska. Jakob Saga. Sandra Spinkiewicz. Rafał Szefer. Michał Wielowiejski. Dariusz Zieliński. Słuchaj, przeniosę się na drugą stronę, bo ja nie wiem. Przestaw ich tak, żeby wiesz, było... Przesuńcie ich tam dalej, dobrze? Tak, bo muszę... No. Więc... Tak, bo ja będę musiała, żebym widziała ekran, bo po prostu nie zasłonię ekran. I pana... Okej. To chyba bardzo fajnie. Thank you, Mr. Otterstein. We will continue the conferring of the MBA diplomas. The UQAM MBA diplomas will be conferred to all graduates by Professor Buzinab, Rector Wachowiak will hand over the Warsaw School of Economics Diplomas of Special Studies. On the slide, you will see your names and the answer to the question about the best CEMBA memory. Ilia Aksonow, Emilia Ambrożek, Dariusz Betkowski, Łukasz Biel, Gracjanna Bogacka, Mariusz Bogacki. Jeszcze Już? Tak, tutaj? Łukasz Bruski, Leszek Romański, Dorota Cichoń, Grzegorz Cyganow, Maciej Czerwonogrodzki, Aleksander Dąbrowski. Teraz? Karolina Brożbar, Agata Dorożalska, Michał Dybał, Kamila Floryszak, Magdalena Gańko, Jarosław Gogołkiewicz, Marcin Golemba, Karolina Górecka. Już? Dobrze. Okej, lecimy dalej. Okay, thank you. Marek Grabski, Janusz Grącki, Adam Gruel, Maciej Jagielski, Rafał Jarecki, Grzegorz Jaśkiewicz. Magdalena Juszczyk, Justyna Kacprowicz, Tomasz Kietliński, Piotr Kolanowski, Piotr Kondraszuk i Jędrzej Kozicki. Małgorzata Krajewska, Nina Kucharska, Charles Kujawski, Artur Kuter, Krzysztof Lipniacki, Anna Łysak-Haczek. Klaudia Łysek, Wojciech Majewski, Wojciech Małek, Agata Nałęcz, Razim Namazow, Jonasz Nastański. Tak? Już. Czekaj. Następne. Przeczytaj jeszcze. A jak na imię? Katarzyna Niechoń-Zaporowska, Jerzy Peszke, Marcin Piętka, Łukasz Pyzel, Jakub Sartowski, Anna Sowota, Krzysztof Spring. Marcin Orłowski, Magdalena Stanilewicz, Joanna Struzik, Maciej Szcześniak, Michał Szpala, Paweł Szuchnik, Adam Tomczak. Katarzyna Wawrzyńczak, Paulina Wielgolaska, Tomasz Wilmański, Rafał Wojnarowski, Jacek Zięba, Karolina Żukowska-Socha. Thank you. And on behalf of the graduates, we will now hear the valedictorian address. This year, the valedictorian speech is delivered by Michał Mazurek.
Dear professors, dear lecturers, dear MBA graduates, dear people responsible for CEMBA program, and dear guests. It's a great honor and privilege to stand in front of you and to express gratitude. Let me start with something personal. I promise to be very, very quick. I would like to thank two most amazing women in my life, my mother and my wife. And I would also like to apologize to my wife for being pretty inefficient at home during these studies. I will do my best to improve. On purpose, I don't use word "I promise," because it might backfire one day. And I would also like to mention one very important person, also MBA graduate. If I have to describe this person with 3 words, it will be triple F: fighter, finisher, and a friend. Radek Borowski, thank you very much for everything you have done for me, for our team, for the whole cohort. Thank you for every hour we have spent together on studying, solving problems, or just chatting. I am sure that your wife, Maria, and your son, Theo, are as proud of you as I am right now. Thank you very much. And on behalf of all MBA graduates, I would like to express appreciation to all professors and lecturers for work you have done for us, for sharing knowledge, for sharing experience, for preparing and solving cases with us. When pandemic struck, it was a challenge for both sides, for us, students, and for you. You had to switch or to adopt to a new virtual teaching environment. It was tough, but you have delivered. Thank you very much for that. I would also like to thank Piotr Górski, Wiesław Banasiewicz, of course, Professor Librowicz, Professor Aniszewska-Banaś, and the whole CEMBA team, both in Poland and in Canada. Thank you for your support, for taking care of us throughout our very challenging journey. I would also like to mention people who are very often in the background, people who have sacrificed their time so we could focus on studying. I'm talking right now about our family members, our friends, and our coworkers. One of my former boss used to say, without a team, nothing but a dream. And I absolutely agree with this short phrase. Without those people, our MBA path would have been much tougher and much longer. We really appreciate your help. And last, but for sure not least, I would like to thank all of you MBA graduates and congratulate for your persistence, ambition, and desire to develop. Hard work. Sorry. I didn't want to repeat persistent. That's why consistency and self-belief are precious under any circumstances. Please do not ever lose this approach. I wish you would succeed in anything you do, wherever you go, the same way you did during these studies. Stay safe, take care of your loved ones, and once again, congratulations. Thank you very, very much.
Dear graduates, as usual, we ask you to rank your lecturers. So I have the pleasure to announce that our top lecturer in your cohorts is Professor Erez Boniel, or Professor of Accounting. Let me mention that Professor Erez Boniel is CEMBA graduate. Dear guests, we are approaching the end of the ceremony. However, before I will ask Professor Wachowiak to close it, let me give you some information. Graduates are very welcome to go to the Parachute Auditorium after the ceremony to take the group photograph. And all those present are invited to enjoy refreshment at the Jajko restaurant, which is on the ground floor opposite the main entrance. And now I would like to ask you to stand and the choir to sing Ode to Joy.
O radości iskra Bogu w kwiecie elizejskich pól, święta na Twym świętym progu staje nasz natchniony chór. O radości iskra Bogu w kwiecie elizejskich pól, święta na Twym świętym progu staje nasz natchniony chór. Jasność Twoja wszystko zaćmi, złączy, co rozdzielił nos. Wszyscy ludzie będą braćmi tam, gdzie Twój przemówi głos. Jasność Twoja wszystko zaćmi, złączy, co rozdzielił los. Wszyscy ludzie będą braćmi tam, gdzie Twój przemówi głos.
Jeszcze proszę.
Please do sit down for a moment. Dear Professor, once again, congratulations, sincere congratulations. It was a great pleasure for us to hand over to you, Professor, this title, the highest title at the universities, namely the title of a honoris causa doctor. And we are proud that our family of doctors, honoris causa doctors, grew to include yet another such eminent person. So once again, Professor, congratulations. I would like to also congratulate everybody that graduated from the MBA course. It's certainly a big satisfaction. I don't know what you will now be doing with free times, because there won't be any excuses anymore. And I wish you further successes. I would also like to thank all the guests, to the Senate, to presidents, to reviewers, to applicants, and ladies and gentlemen, to the great choir. And as a professor said, after the closure of the celebration, you are welcome to join us for refreshments in Jajko restaurant. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm closing the celebration of the session on occasion of handing over the honoris causa diploma to Professor Michela Librowicza. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, cordially.
Szkoła Główna Handlowa, SGH.